Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes for Health says while there are vaccines on the horizon,
when you're talking about the availability of a vaccine, even to scale it up, you're talking about a year to a year and a half.
An American soldier in South Korea has now contracted the virus, one of more than 1,100 cases in that country. In China, the corona death toll now more than 2,700 people. America is listening to Fox News.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in? Wait, hold on, that was last month. Now it's this month. But by popular demand, we're extending our New Year's solution 4.65% personal loan through February. Money for whatever you want at 4.65% APR from Bank Pacific. We're still celebrating.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Safety regulators are slamming Tesla and another government agency in the way they examined a fatal crash of a Tesla using autopilot.
The NTSB members said Tesla needs better safeguards and systems to alert drivers when they've disengaged. But the board also faulted the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for being reactionary rather than implementing safety rules based on foreseeable problems. Board Chairman Robert Sumwalt said some recent crashes were due to an over-reliance on autopilot technology.
It's time to stop enabling drivers in any partially automated vehicle to pretend that they have driverless cars, because they don't.
In examining a fatal Tesla crash involving autopilot in California, they found the driver, an Apple engineer, had been playing a video game on his phone before the crash. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
J.P. Morgan Chase says it will no longer do business with coal companies and will restrict financing to those companies that drill in the Arctic. The announcement coming at the same time the bank announced it'll extend $200 billion in financing to clean and renewable energy companies by 2025. In a surprise move, the head of Disney is out.
Bob Iger has been at the helm of Disney since 2005. In a surprise announcement, the company says he'll end his tenure as chief executive officer effective immediately, but will remain executive chairman through 2021. Bob Chapek, who leads Disney Parks, will assume the role as CEO. Iger helped oversee the addition of Marvel, Pixar, and Lucasfilm. He also led Disney through its $71 billion purchase of 21st Century Fox and pushed the House of Mouse to get into the video streaming service. Tom Graham, Fox News.
Amazon opening its first cashierless supermarket where shoppers can grab milk and eggs and walk out without waiting in line or even taking out their wallets. The latest sign that Amazon is serious about shaking up the grocery industry. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
February 27th, it's the last call for leadership.
How do you grow a company? You grow a company by growing people. And when you grow them, they increase their capacity. When they increase their capacity, they begin to increase the capacity of what you can accomplish.
The voice of John C. Maxwell on the last chance to see the Live to Lead conference in November. Over 300 leaders and future leaders experienced a day full of big ideas, fun, and high-level motivation. For those who couldn't make it, we're doing it again. Registration closes soon. Get the details at guamtraining.com. Live to Lead is brought to you by Atkins Kroll, Guam's #1 car dealership. Also by Hawaiian Rock Products, the Guam Contractors Association, the Guam Daily Post, and 93.3 The Point. Energize your team. Join the Guam Live to Lead conference today.
Docomo Pacific wants to keep your business connected. When you sign up for a smart business bundle, you're gaining more than just mobile, internet, and phone services. Receive unbeatable value for your money and the convenience of having it all on one bill. All your business services on the widest and fastest network in Guam and the Marianas. Call 688-2677 for more information on partnering your business. Docomo Pacific Business, delivering your future today.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone line lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Where have I heard that before?
Second Amendment, U.S. Constitution, sir.
I guess that must be it. Yeah, it just seems to, it's like one of those ear bugs, you know. I get it in my head and it just seems to stay there day after day after day. Sometimes I open my mouth and I'm not even thinking about it, and I just unconsciously say, well, regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. It's important that we know these things, that we know what we can find in our Constitution, the importance of those things in our Constitution as far as our daily lives are concerned. And we also have to be aware that there are those who would perhaps like to take away the freedom and liberty that our Constitution provides for us, well, not provides for us, but recognizes in us. The Constitution doesn't provide it. It recognizes and attempts to protect it from those who would come along and take it away. So that's one of the reasons that I start out every day with a reading from the U.S. Constitution, the Second Amendment. Having done that, I'll go next to Zemi Ikotny. So, as you longtime listeners know, this is the portion of the program where I examine the editorial pages of our two newspapers, try to find an editorial on the page. I'm not always successful with respect to the Daily News. More often than not, I find some boilerplate from Gannett News Service or USA Today instead of a real homegrown editorial. So quite often I ignore the editorial. Sometimes I'll read it just to kind of poke fun at it or poke fun at them. Maybe I'll do that today. Today we have James S. Robbins, special to USA Today, is the author of the piece that ran on the USA Today, as you were, USA Today Guam edition, also known as the Pacific Daily News. And the headline of this editorial is Socialist Battle for Soul of Democrat Party. Now, I got to start out quibbling right there. The Democrat Party has a soul? I hadn't noticed. In fact, I see it just the other way around. The Democratic Party has no soul any more than, those people over there on the far left who are exemplifying the latest edition of neo-Marxism have a soul. So James Robbins says, is America ready for a socialist presidential candidate? Democrats squared off on the issue last week in Vegas. Democrat frontrunner Bernie Sanders embraced the label of democratic socialist and said that in many ways the country is socialist already if you are among the wealthy. Billionaire businessman Michael Bloomberg stood up for capitalism, as did, surprisingly, Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren stood up for capitalism. That's so kind of surprising. I wouldn't think that, a tribal upbringing would suit someone for capitalism. Other Democrat candidates might prefer to self-describe as progressive or to avoid labels altogether, but the exchanges on stage illustrated the long-standing stresses in the party over terminology, tactics, and the balance between ideology and pragmatism. Regardless of the label, socialist ideas clearly have a home in the Democrat Party. Good. Every candidate in the debate promoted plans that would increase government management of the economy. Now remember that, government management of the economy. Tip, this is not a good thing, the government managing the economy. And we'll get to that when we get to the editorial that ran in the Post today. And a recent Gallup poll found that 76% of Democrats would back a socialist for president. Socialism is also more popular among young people than older generations. It's because young folks don't know much. Socialism is far less attractive to the American public generally. The same Gallup poll showed that 53% of Americans would oppose a socialist as chief executive. My comment there, is that all? In fact, socialists rank lowest of all characteristics Gallup tested, whether age, gender, race, or religion, and was the only one facing majority opposition. Sanders' critics in the party acknowledged that his ideas fire up the progressive base, also known as the lunatic fringe, but also limit his broader appeal. For example, half the Democrat voters in the New Hampshire primary thought Sanders' policies were too liberal. But pollsters were asking the wrong question, since for progressives who support Sanders, quote, liberal, close quote, is a dirty word. That's interesting. You know, liberal, it used to be liberal was a good word. You know, it is a liberal government, Democrat, rule of law, due process, etc. And I have from time to time set myself out as a classical liberal along the lines of Thomas Jefferson. But the Democrats made such a mess of the word liberal that they had to dump it. And now they call themselves progressives instead. But as this editorial says, liberal is a dirty word as far as the Sanders nieces. And it's more appropriate for old school compromisers like former Vice President Joe Biden. And Sanders backers can point out that national support for their candidate has grown while Biden's has begun to collapse. I would reword that sentence to say, while Biden has begun to collapse. Sanders noted during the debate that Wall Street Journal poll showing a two-thirds of the voters have reservations or are very uncomfortable with a socialist candidate also showed him with a double-digit lead over his opponents. Times have certainly changed. At the end of the Cold War, it would have been unthinkable for a major party candidate to even mention socialism, except to condemn it. Back in 1988, only 15% of voters ever identified as liberal. 1988. Those were the good old days. In that campaign year, then Vice President George H.W. Bush tried to court centrist Reagan Democrats by tagging Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis a, quote, tax and spend liberal. Dukakis fed the issue at first by trying to avoid the literal label, then finally admitting it a few days before the election. Whether this cost Dukakis votes or not, the liberal brand emerged severely tarnished. This helped give rise to the New Democrats faction that sought to project a more moderate image for the party. They talked up centrist triangulation and pursued policies that are anathema to today's Democrats. Archetypical New Democrat President Bill Clinton backed restricting immigration, putting more police on the streets, passing broad tax cuts, restrictive welfare reform, and the Defense of Marriage Act. Boy, Bill Clinton. If he tried to do that stuff nowadays, they'd tar and feather him. Then Senator Biden supported these policies in the 90s and has been forced to flee his record. This is the background to a recent tiff between Sanders and James Carville, the stalwart Democrat strategist who helped put Clinton in the White House. For Carville, Sanders' campaign represents the type of threat the New Democrats had sought to prevent, an ideological movement that would propel an unelectable candidate to the Democrat nomination, resulting in a rout potentially as decisive as when ultra-liberal George McGovern lost 49 states to incumbent Richard Nixon in 1972. Tellingly, the one state that George McGovern carried was the great and sovereign state of Massachusetts. Carville said he's scared to death of the ideological drift of the party, remarking, "It's like we're losing our damn minds." Sanders clapped back that Carville was a political hack, and Carville embraced the term, saying he's not an ideologue or purist, adding, perhaps unfairly, "At least I'm not a communist." Good comeback. In this respect, Carville was echoing President Trump, who said in a pre-Super Bowl interview, I think of communism when I think of Bernie. And so do I. Everything about Bernie says communism to me. Michael Bloomberg also brought up communism in the debate, which Sanders called a, quote, cheap shot. A cheap shot is when you describe a politician as he really is when he's trying to appear as something else, apparently. If the November election comes down to debating whether Bernie Sanders better fits the definition of a socialist or a communist, the Trump campaign has nothing to worry about. And that's why I sit over here on the sidelines and say, go, Bernie, go. We want Bernie. We want Bernie. I remember on the way down here, I was listening to one of my fellow broadcasters on the point, a guy named Rush. What's his name?
Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh, yeah. And he played a couple of cuts from recordings of some of the things that Sanders had said. And one of the things he said that Cuba wasn't all bad. And China has lifted more people out of poverty than any country in the world. You know, with raps like that, he'll go far. Maybe he could, if he loses the presidential election here, he could run for president of China. So that's what the Daily News ran on its editorial page today. It's good. It's readable. It makes some good points. It's worth time, but I'm kind of stuck on this idea that a local daily newspaper should run editorials that reflect the community in which the paper is printed. The Daily News seems to have abandoned that old tradition. They haven't run a daily, a local editorial for so long. I can't remember it. Now I go to the Post, and it's going to be another drought day for the Post. They haven't had a blue star in 3 days, and they ain't going to get one today. I can tell you that. Here it goes. Administration's health plan, a good idea if private sector workers stand to benefit as well. One of the more notable plans mentioned in Governor Lulian Guerrero's State of the Island address Monday was what seems like the beginning of an effort to draw up a comprehensive public health plan, not exclusively to GovGuam workers, retirees, and their families, but for all Guam. Remember when I was talking about the burn and managing the economy, the government managing the economy? Well, here we go. It sounds like a massive undertaking. Well, that's what it is. And the details have yet to be ironed out. But these efforts are worth taking. The idea is premised in part on the more than $330 million a year at the disposal of the government of Guam when it comes to health care spending. This comes in the form of Medicaid, Medicare. Boy, I guess the Post doesn't know that Medicare is the third rail of American politics. Okay, the $330 million comes in the form of Medicaid, Medicare, and public health spending, as well as taxpayer subsidies to Guam Memorial Hospital. The funding pot can provide GovGuam the start-up money and purchasing power to come up with a health plan for all of the 70,000 adults and their dependents on Guam, plus buy-in for private companies and private sector employees for an affordable contribution. So we're looking for a health care plan that will provide health care for 70,000 people. And it may very well be attractive to the private sector. There is power in numbers, and the hope is this announcement will ultimately result in GovGuam finally extending the health insurance blanket beyond GovGuam families to cover private sector workers' families as well. I'm not holding my breath. GovGuam's intent to look after the welfare of workers beyond the confines of the government of Guam workforce and government retirees is long overdue. No. Once again, this is what I like to see. An effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law that provides basic government services. Providing health insurance is not a basic government service. Okay. GovGuam's intent to look after the welfare of the workers from each according to his ability to each according to his needs. Doesn't that sound good, Real Joe Cruz?
Sounds beautiful, sir.
Uh-huh. Now comes the hard work, figuring out the details such as the cost, coverage, timelines, and hard deadlines. Getting input from private sector employers and employees and healthcare professionals is key too. Oh, you think maybe we should talk with healthcare professionals about this? Whatever the Leon Guerrero administration decides to do, the next steps should not leave the private sector's workers' interests behind. They are voters too. So that's what we need, is we need to politicize health care on the island. We need a bigger government to provide health care or health insurance to every single person on the island. And according to the Post here, we have to remember that those folks in the private sectors are voters too. So we need to politicize the whole thing. How do you spell socialized medicine? I think I know how to spell it, Real Joe Cruz. P-O-S-T. Socialized medicine. I have my blue pen right here, Guam Daily Post. I have your editorial. I'm going to take my pen. I'm going to put it in my pocket. I'm not going to need it today. So every once in a while, I don't know what happens to the Post, but it seems to drift to the left. I don't know if it's a matter of personalities or climate or environment but it's strange. They do such a good job so often, and once in a while we come up with something like health care for everybody because they're voters too. Okay. Gus Jasonga says the last time he remembered seeing a local editorial was 15 years ago. Wow. You're probably not exaggerating that much, Gus. Okay, then I go to the card. This is what I got on today's card. I've got Tall Tales versus Bernie, number 5. Now, if it seems like I'm picking on Bernie, like I feel the burn several times during the program, you want to know why that is? Because I'm picking on Bernie. I have absolutely no use for this Democrat socialist idea, these Democrat socialist ideas of his. And I don't have much use for him. If you study his life, the first time he ever had a job was when he was the mayor of, what's the name of the town in Vermont? Yeah, I had it right on the tip of my tongue. One of the big cities in Vermont. And he took his honeymoon in Moscow when he married his second wife. They honeymooned in Moscow. Oh, Burlington, Vermont. That's it. Yeah, they honeymooned in Moscow, and he praises Cuba, and he can't say enough about communist countries. Although he said, "Oh no, I'm a Democrat socialist." Okay, let's check with. Let's check with Chris here to see if he has any comments on the card. Go ahead, Chris.
Ready, fire, aim.
Here you go.
So my opinion is, and I think you would concur as a Marine, when you ever address a Marine, particularly formally, you should stand upright.
Correct.
So you've intrigued me again, Bob, with your analysis of the editorial in the Post. First of all, I'm not sure whether PDN is just not writing local editorials anymore because of the retirement of Dwayne George, but I think he did retire, but you would have thought they would have, filled in that position. But I think that's possibly why they run national editorials.
It seems to me I've seen Dwayne's name in the masthead in the paper before as the content coach.
Was that right?
Yeah.
I thought he had retired. I thought I had seen that somewhere, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
But anyways, I put out the ready, fire, aim analogy on this discussion on universal health care only for the reason that it reminds me of when there was the announcement of local payment for war reparations. I believe on the announcement to the actual passage of a bill with regard to that, it was about 8 to 9 months.
They started talking about having checks in people's hands on Liberation Day. You're right, Chris.
Correct. And, I get it. We've both been there and have drafted legislation. I know for sure there's no question that nothing will leave Bob's desk without it being completely vetted, at least by his team, and probably a few amendments on the floor. But I know Bob would never introduce a bill without a thoroughly complete thought and information in there to back it up. But it seems like this is kind of the method here now is throw it out there. And you've heard this before from different offices that this bill is designed to start a conversation. I think the problem with that is that you at least have to have bones that you can flesh out, if you will, as what the term denotes. And I mean, to me, when there's not even bones, it's hard to have a discussion. You think that's correct?
Well, it's hard to have a discussion unless the discussion zeroes in on criticizing what has been done. Then it's candy for talk show hosts, Chris.
Right, right. And so that's always my problem with discussions like this, because what happens when you're an individual, yourself, myself, others, that would just be out and about for any reason, having been in public service before, engaged in myself from time to time, engaging with the public in a talk show format or other media formats. And that is when you get that question, what do you think? And the thing is it's so hard to even have a comment on it, because you have people that come from both sides of the spectrum who all they hear is, I'm going to get health care for free. And then you have the other person saying, I'm going to pay for it. And so that's why I have a little bit of trouble with large policies like this that are and pronouncements are made. And the reason why I was also lured into your conversation in terms of the realm of politics is there was nobody other than Kamala Harris who learned hard and fast on the campaign trail when she was running for president and went to visit senior homes. And some beautiful mid-80s, maybe 90-year-old woman just basically told her straight up when she came to greet her at her dining table, don't you mess with my Medicare.
The third rail of American politics.
That is so to even think that is available for appropriation, I think is just a non-starter straight away.
Agreed, Chris.
There is nothing worse that you could tell a person who has a fixed income, who has the most medical needs of their lives, or either survival or quality of life, than to put in danger the possibility of their health care coverage. And so anyways, just wanted to finish that thought by saying, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think that we need to really start educating ourselves as a community and having a discussion amongst ourselves, saying when we talk about big policies, let's at least put out a framework other than, just a general term, a general consensus or a general idea, so that we have something to chew on and work through. But every effort with regard to this effort, as we know, has been unsuccessful, and even just the noble thought of it, or the humanitarian or human service thought of it is definitely correct to consider, but it is something I think that deserves a lot more attention and detail.
Chris,
one thing I will say, yeah, go ahead.
After you, sir.
One thing I will say in closing is that, the thing is that the private, my exploration into this idea and talking to the private sector is the private sector really is where you need to go first to discuss these issues. I remember Frank Capillo, even when there was a discussion when the government was talking about what level of service to provide for government employees and how much, when discussing availability for insurance and what kind of plans even for the government of Guam. I mean, he always had this straightforward approach to it, saying, set a budget for it, and then the plan can be tailored to a budget. Because if all you want is the sky, then you're going to get the price for what it costs to have the sky and the moon and the stars. But if you set a budget for it, everything can be worked around it in that arena. And in the private sector, the one thing I've always heard from the private sector when I approached them on this issue was the best possibility of pooling is for those employers who have too small of a group of employees to be able to join together to create a larger pool. But those are working people because normally for non-working people, there's some sort of indigent safety net anyways, and the hospital never turns anybody away. So those are the kind of thoughtful commentary that I sought out, that to where when you approach something like this, at least you've come from, and spoken to the people who are going to pay for it.
Well, I would just say, I'll make a couple of comments after the break, but you made some really good points as usual, Chris, and thank you very much for calling and commenting on Demi Ikotny. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is Marcy Loquick, and I'll be listening carefully. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, Chris.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
You know that morning routine we've talked about? Well, I found some ideas you might try to make it even more effective. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, small tweaks to the routine can make a difference.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Michael St. Nicholas. Our veterans deserve the best, and I'm working hard to make sure they receive what they earned defending our freedom. If you need help receiving the benefits you earned from the VA or the Defense Department, please call my office at 475-6453 or go online at stnicholas.house.gov. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for your service.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael St. Nicholas.
Now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Chris mentioned the name of Frank Campilio, the general manager over at Calvo Select Care. And I'm going to give you a little free advice, Governor Lulian Guerrero. If you want to do something in health care, call Frank Campilio. Frank understands it, knows what he's doing, ran a very good company. The second thing I want to say is this. We learned a really hard lesson really quickly with the health insurance program for the government of Guam. We for a while, for most of the time, we had a setup where there were 3 providers and customers could choose, government employees and retirees could choose which health insurance company they wanted to go with. But we decided we'd save money and have only a single health insurer this time around. So, in effect, we created a monopoly. And that monopoly, by definition, of course, has no competition. How's it working out for us? Working out so well that the legislature scheduled something that's never happened before, an open house for Aetna to come in and explain what they're doing to their dissatisfied customers, who are legion. But, you know what why not? They got the monopoly. So I think we learned something there, you know, that government creating monopolies may not be a very good idea. And then something else Chris touched on was smaller employers grouping themselves together. I know that the Contractors Association, the Bar Association, I think the realtors do that also, that if you're a member of those associations, you can sign up for their group policy. That's a pretty good approach, and it probably came about with no government action or interference at all. Okay, so much for Demi Ikotny. Let's go from there to the card. And as I mentioned, the first item, I did want to say something about Demi Ikotny. I got a post here from Gus Kashongas. He said, as long as PDN is printed on the island, that newspaper should have a local editorial. Hear, hear. Lee Weber, when he was publisher, always had local editorials. And Gus says, matter of fact, locals could went right in for Friday's editorials, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe Sunday, because he used to have this. They had the Sunday Forum, which was a really good setup. They would pick a topic that people were interested in. They would have lunch at the conference room of the Daily News on Thursday, a free lunch. And sometimes as many as a dozen people would come down and have a discussion on that particular issue. The editorial page editor would sit in, and of course the people at that meeting were attempting to influence the editorial page editor in his writing of the editorial. And they got some really good editorials and some really good submissions by readers. We don't do that anymore. In fact, the paper is just a shadow of what it used to be anymore. But I go along with you there, Gus. If you're going to be a local newspaper, you should run local editorials. Okay, so back to the card here, and I'm going to go to the burn. Remember, I've got some questions. Senator Bernie Sanders is a serious candidate for the 2020 Democrat presidential nomination, arguably the front runner. Time to ask him a few questions. And I've asked 4 questions up until now. Time for the 5th question. You support ending U.S. oil exports to fight climate change. I guess if people can't get it, if they can't get our oil, they can't burn it. You support ending U.S. oil exports to fight climate change. If the United States, 8th on the list of the world's top 15 exporters in 2018, stopped selling crude, would global consumption of fossil fuels decline by the same amount? Or would customers seek alternative sources of supply, creating a windfall for 14 other countries, including Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela? What do you think about that, Mr. Social Democrat? Okay, and let's see. I got Jack. I thought that would probably be another Joe. Have you opened the Joe line already, Real Joe Cruz? You did. Okay. Okay, Jack, what do you got to say?
Hey, good afternoon there, Bob.
Howdy.
Yeah, I'm just getting off a little bit early and try to hit the Ash Wednesday mass down there. Listen, I was listening a little bit. I didn't catch all of Chris's comments, but I heard a little bit about how you were speaking about healthcare and health ensurance here in Guam, and really to concentrate on Guam. It really has been a less than enjoyable ride with healthcare and insurance here in Guam. I'll let you know that you were speaking earlier about Aetna. I have insurance, but I don't have insurance that qualifies for my child when he goes to school abroad. So he had to get what they call at Aetna, it's called SHIP, Student Health Insurance Plan. And I had to pay for that insurance plan out of my pocket. That's $2,500 a semester. And because, I didn't have a compatible insurance to cover him while I was over there. So when he comes over here, that plan doesn't cover him because apparently Aetna has Aetna Domestic, which my son is covered under, and over here in Guam, it's Aetna International. So whenever he, when he went to go get medicine or see a doctor for his arm, that came out of my pocket. So from there on, you work your way backwards. And you remember what Matt Rector did to the insurance, right?
No, I don't remember, Jack.
Do you remember when he managed to divide the teachers' portion out of the government? Remember, like you said, there was 3 choices, and that he managed to remove the retirees and those more, let's say, high risk or cost more. He managed to move them out of the active employers' portion of an insurance, and that created a divide there. And then to go further back, we had that fiasco with the Guam Health Insurance plan back in the 70s or 80s, early 80s?
GMHP, Guam Memorial Health Plan, yeah.
Awful. So can we just say that when it comes to insurance, my dad has always had this quote, insurance is one of those things that doesn't make sense because you have to lose to win. But it hasn't been a great road. And I explained to Ray, when I had to take my aunt last year to get a mammogram. And even under the current Medicare system, there's just so much fraud and abuse that's been happening. We see what happened to the ambulance abuse here in Guam. How many millions did that cost? People turn the other way because they think it doesn't affect them, but it does. It drives costs up. Procedures that you don't need, tests that you don't need. But this comes with insurance policies and insurance plans that try to cover or overreach their goal. And I think the best way to approach it, doesn't matter whether you want to call it universal or you want to call it choice or whatever. The best way for us here in Guam to approach healthcare, because really what we're talking about right now is not healthcare. We're talking about who's paying for the bills. We're not talking about a better aspirin. We're not talking about a better cold medicine. We're just talking about who pays for the bills. But if you want to get serious and talk about healthcare, really here we need to focus more on preventive stuff, and we need to focus more on what clinicians here in Guam would say that that is the most prevalent need. So like diabetes, or things to do with the kidney, or whatever it is there on the top list. Because what happens over in the States or some other place might not be what is suited for us. And I think that it needs to start from the bottom up. It doesn't start with policymakers, and it doesn't start with insurance companies. It starts with clinicians that have been here, that see their patients. And when I say clinicians, it's not only your doctor. We're talking to people that provide your durable or non-durable goods. We're talking about your pharmacists. We're talking about your physical therapist. Anybody in your network that has to deal with a patient. Those people need to be consulted first and foremost to get at least some sort of guideline of what we need and what is more in need right now. We're not looking for gold-plated urinals or high internet speed in every room. What we need is just for basic care. What is it that we need in this island? And then we could come together and say, listen, this is a plan here. It's not a pie in the sky plan. It's what we need right now to prevent your son, your daughter, your grandfather, your mom, your dad from getting from needing catastrophic care. You need to do the preventive maintenance first. You need to make sure that they get on the right meds, and you need meds that are affordable. And I don't think anybody has done that. I don't think anybody will. And that's the sad case.
Even our governor, who is a graduate nurse.
Exactly. They're just pushing paper, man. Pushing paper from one side to the other side. And those pushing papers, that comes with a price tag. And the people that are making so-called healthcare decisions for us, they're just concerned about the numbers. You speak about 330 million. Really?
Well, I've developed a name for the planning process that the governor used in coming up with her universal health care note in her State of the Island speech. It is the birthday cake method of planning. And here's how it works, Jack. Okay, close your eyes and make a wish. And when you open your eyes, blow out all the candles, and maybe your wish will come true. That was the process that I think she used.
Not only that, there was a queen in Europe that said, "Hey, there's a problem out there with feeding the or whatever." What did he say? She said, "Let them eat cake."
People don't have bread. Well, then let them eat cake.
That's it.
Let's take a break, Jack. Thanks for calling.
All right, Bob.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Sirena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so here we are again, and I'll repeat my last statement there for emphasis. It appears that Governor Lulian Guerrero used the birthday party method of planning when she announced her universal health care. Here's how the birthday party or the birthday cake method of planning works. Close your eyes, make a wish. Open your eyes and blow out the candles, and maybe your wish will come true. Couple of notes here from Gus Jasangas. Gus says it's true. China is the largest oil purchaser, and U.S. is one of the largest oil producers and exporter of oil and gas. And Gus also says, "Good night, Bob. I always enjoy watching your show after a day of fighting FAA and oil giants in Texas. Have a good day." So Gus watches us from the oil patch down there in Texas. He's a pretty regular contributor. Always glad to have you aboard, Gus. Sleep tight. Okay, so back to the card here. I've got about 6 minutes before that big halftime show. I think I've got time to start the next item on the card. I'm sure that I won't have time to finish it. But it's the latest news. This item on the card, well, let me just read the rest of the items on the card. I started out with Tall Tales versus the Burn. And next I've got Levin Camacho versus the CCU. Mary Gutierrez versus Tello. And then I've got LGBTQIA versus Buttigieg, which has been on the card for a few days. Along with Buttigieg versus Rush, and Utah versus monogamy, a couple other items. So I'll tell you what, I think maybe I'll take a peek at Facebook here and then start CCU after the break. Let's see who I've got here. Pam Duvall. Boy, Pam is so regular. You know, she's always there. She's usually one of the first people to sign in. And provided us some pretty valuable information when we were talking about rental rates. And let's see, I've got Sherry Iriarte, who's listening on the radio. Okay, well, that's what I do a lot of the times. I'm just not able to sit in front of my my phone or my iPad or whatever and FaceTime. And then I had a comment from Gus Jasangas. And then I've got one here, Bernie and Lou sitting on a tree thinking of how to kill democracy. Free universal health care, followed by free college, massive tax increases, and liberties abolished. Let's see the rest of it here. Yeah, I'm going to read it again here now that I got the whole thing in front of me. Bernie and Lou sitting on a tree thinking of how to kill democracy. Free universal health care, followed by free college, massive tax increases, and liberties abolished. Yeah, very good, Ishmael. Emina Doss, poet laureate, Guy Tall Tales, Ishmael Velez. Thank you, Ishmael. And see, I guess that's about all I got for Facebook comments today. Remember, you could always get get on the air with our international radio listening audience by calling 888-8255. You can always post a comment on Facebook, which I may very well read over the air, comment on, even give you a verbal pat on the back for if you so desire. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to start the CCU, Leaving versus the CCU, even though I've only got about 2 minutes till the break, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do one more question from Bernie, just so I don't have to break up this topic. So I'm going to go to Bernie, number 6 on the Bernie list. Here's a question to ask Bernie. Should Norway, the world's 12th largest oil exporter, also shut down its industry, even though it's a crucial source of funds for that country's universal health care and other generous social benefits? Bernie, if you were in Norway doing that, if you could do that in Norway, it would be fair to say that you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. Cut out all these oil exports, and then you'd have to collapse your generous social benefits and universal health care, which, of course, brings us back to that age-old question. If we do these things, who's going to pay for it? And while I'm on the subject of Norway, the pro-socialists in our country, when they hear the word socialist, they say, well, how about Norway and Denmark? Sweden, they're socialist countries. They seem to be doing okay. Well, I'll clarify that right after the break, and then I'm going to launch into Leaving versus the CCU. So, big halftime show. I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Another raucous Democrat debate. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, and much of it aimed at the delegate count leader, Bernie Sanders.
Bernie, in fact, hasn't passed much of anything. The fact of the matter is... But I get to answer I get to answer that. Look, the fact is, here's the deal. I'm not out of time. You spoke over time, and I'm going to talk. Here's the deal.
Vice President Joe Biden, and there was this from former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
That's why Russia is helping you get elected, so you'll lose to him.
Senator Amy Klobuchar said the numbers in Senator Sanders' spending plans don't add up, but Sanders defended his plans and said his campaign is about the workers.
The economy is doing really great for people like Mr. Bloomberg and other billionaires. In the last 3 years, billionaires in this country saw an $850 billion increase in their wealth.
Joe Biden, asked by the moderator on CBS if he would continue his campaign if he doesn't do well in Saturday's South Carolina primary, would only say he is going to win in South Carolina. 23-year-old American soldier stationed in South Korea has now been diagnosed with the coronavirus. South Korea now has more than 1,100 cases of the illness and reports 11 deaths from it. Fewer than 60 cases reported so far in the United States, most in people likely infected in China or in Japan. But Dr. Nancy Messonnier of the Centers for Disease Control says,
we expect we will see community spread in this country. It's not so much a question of if this will happen anymore, but rather more a question of exactly when this will happen and how many people in this country will have severe illness.
And Dr. Messonnier says there could be a disruption of everyday life. Corona fear is pushing the markets much lower Tuesday, the Dow losing 879 points, NASDAQ off 255, the S&P 500 losing 97 points. Dow futures are up modestly. America is listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in? Wait, hold on, that was last month. Now it's this month. But by popular demand, we're extending our New Year's solution 4.65% personal loan through February. Money for whatever you want at 4.65% APR from Bank Pacific. We're still celebrating.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Mescla Tomorrow Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is now introducing an at-table all-you-can-eat breakfast menu from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. every Saturday and 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. every Sunday. Enjoy some quality time with your friends and family with some of your favorite local cuisine, from their waffle, hotcakes, and French toast station to their eggs and omelet station and a variety of scrumptious desserts. Weekends at Mescla Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel just got hotter. New year, new menu. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Some restrictions apply.
Tuesday night's Democrat debate aside, there are some Democrats in Florida who want Bernie Sanders' name taken off the ballot.
The lawsuit in Leon County claims Sanders is a political interloper and not a bona fide Democrat, despite his being registered as one with the Federal Elections Commission. 80-year-old George Brown says in our political climate today, Democrats need to have a voice. Korean War veteran Frank Bach says Sanders eliminates his vote as a Democrat. They say Sanders should run as an independent. The executive director of the Florida Democratic Party calls the lawsuit ridiculous. The Florida Democratic Party, the National Democratic Party, and Florida Secretary of State Laurel Lee were also named as defendants. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
A late February snowstorm hitting the Midwest, parts of Indiana, Michigan, and Northwest Ohio under a winter weather advisory. The National Weather Service says those areas could get 5 to 7 inches of snow between now and late Wednesday. There's now a red flag law on the books in New Mexico. Governor Grisham, signing that bill on Tuesday and telling some of the sheriffs in New Mexico who oppose that bill that if they do not intend to enforce the new law that could allow state judges to order the surrender of firearms to people who appear to pose danger, then they should resign their commissions. Federal Judge Amy Berman Jackson has questioned the jurors who convicted Roger Stone for lying to Congress about defense claims of jury misconduct, including by the jury forewoman who wrote anti-Stone and anti-Trump posts on social medias. Stone's attorneys have asked for a new trial. Judge Jackson has taken the testimony under advisement and says she'll issue a ruling later. The NFL reports its move closer to labor peace early Wednesday when player representatives voted to send a new deal already approved by the owners to the full union membership for potential ratification. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
February 27th, it's the last call for leadership.
If you want to add value to people, you have to know and relate to what other people value. You see, great leaders are first of all listeners, and then they're learners, and then they're leaders.
The voice of John C. Maxwell, who leads a team of world-class speakers on the last chance to see the Live to Lead conference in November. Over 300 leaders and future leaders experienced a day full of big ideas, fun, and high-level motivation. For those who couldn't make it, we're doing it again. Registration closes soon. Get the details at GuamTraining.com. Live to Lead is brought to you by Atkins Kroll, Guam's #1 car dealership. Also by Personal Finance Center and the Guam Chamber of Commerce. Energize your team. Join the Guam Live to Lead conference today.
Cocoa Coffee Company is now available at Circle K. Single origin coffee beans carefully sourced and locally roasted to give you the freshest cup of coffee Guam has to offer. Grab a cup that's brewed every 30 minutes or purchase a bag of the locally roasted whole beans. Flavors now serving: light medium roasted Ethiopia and medium dark roasted Jamaican Blue Mountain. Exclusively available at Circle K. With every Cocoa Coffee Company purchase, a portion of the proceeds will go towards the Cocoa Recovery Program.
Off a day, this is Congressman Michael Nicholas. Our veterans deserve the best, and I'm working hard to make sure they receive what they earned defending our freedom. If you need help receiving the benefits you earned from the VA or the Defense Department, please call my office at 475-6453 or go online at stnicholas.house.gov. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for your service.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael Nicholas.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Greatest halftime show on FM radio. You won't find anything better anywhere. I'll put our halftime show up against just about anything. Okay, so here we are, back to the card. Next item on the card is leaving Camacho. Leaving on a jet plane?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Yeah. Versus the CCU. And this is a story that ran in the Daily News today. The Office of the Attorney General filed a lawsuit. Well, actually, it was the Attorney General himself. Offices don't file lawsuits. We have a hard time getting that straight with our media here. The Attorney General filed a lawsuit against the Consolidated Commission on Utility members related to a 2015 closed-door meeting in which commissioners decided on a $28,000 raise for the Guam Water Works Authority interim general manager, according to the AG's office. The lawsuit was filed on Monday and names Joseph Duenas, Francis Santos, Simon Sanchez, and former members George Bamba and Pedro Guerrero. The closed-door decision violated Guam's open government law, the lawsuit stated. The open government law is clear that any discussions concerning salaries or salary adjustments must be held in a public meeting, the lawsuit stated. The AG's office is seeking a court order voiding the salary adjustment and that the commissioners pay back the funds. According to the complaint, the CCU on February 24, 2015, which, by the way, was 5 years before the suit was filed. The suit was filed on February 24, 2020. Called a regular meeting and went into executive session where they discussed salary for the interim general manager for GWA. The commissioners reconvened the regular session and moved to adopt a decision to set the salary at $140,000, the lawsuit stated. The commissioners unanimously approved. The agenda for the meeting didn't indicate the commissioners would be discussing or deciding the interim general manager's salary, the suit stated. Attorney General Levin Camacho said in a statement, in order to regain the public's trust in our government, we can't treat repeated violations of our laws as business as usual. Well, I think that's what people have been telling you, Levin. You don't need to tell us that. That's what people have been telling you. So you're right about that. Now, of course, this brings up what the CCU did in November of 2018. They did the same thing. And they raised the salaries of several people, including 2 of their lawyers. And the newspaper report said, well, yeah, these salary increases were made on such and such a date, and it happened in executive session. And the newspaper didn't pick up on that it was anything unusual. Well, guess what? When I see the words executive session, my eyes really perk up. And I got on top of that and pointed out to all and sundry that you can't discuss salary in executive session. The CCU stonewalled for a while, and then the Attorney General says, you can't do that, fellas. You got to collect that money back. So then the next thing was that I and a couple of others, I think Ken also, asked to see the minutes of that executive session and the recording. And the CCU, primarily Joey Duenas, stonewalled. And through this entire affair, Joey maintained the public posture that we can evaluate employees that report to us in executive session, and then after we've done evaluating them, we can come out and then we can make a motion to increase salaries. But we can't discuss salary in executive session. And every time this discussion occurred, I said, that's silly. How do you set salaries if you don't base it on an evaluation? Do you examine the entrails of a pig? Do you take the employee's temperature and multiply it by the square root of the employee's age, and that's how you set salary? Is that how you do it? Of course, the evaluation is part and parcel of the salary increase process. You can't divorce the two. Well, a public auditor audited the CCU and found that they had made 31 errors, just like the November 18 error. And the audit report said that the CCU maintained that they could come out and they could discuss in private and come out and make the motion in public, and it was okay. Now, the report wasn't detailed enough to know if the CCU was trying to maintain the silly argument that you can evaluate an employee in private and then come out and give him his salary increase in public, as though there's no connection at all between the evaluation and the salary increase. Well, apparently that tactic didn't work very well for them on the 24th of February of 2015. It's come back now to bite them if that's what they did. I don't know exactly what it was they did, but I'm going to offer a little free advice. I'm going to do a little, Real Joe Cruz, get out your Law and Order notebook here. Yeah, keep your Law and Order notebook handy here, because we're going to have a little school on the open government law, what it says and what it doesn't say, which is perhaps more important than what it says, so that any member of a board or commission would be well advised to pay attention to what I'm going to say here. Okay, you start out with this proposition. Start out with the everybody knows propositions that boards and commissions occasionally go into executive session. They don't discuss everything in executive session. There are only some things that they can discuss in executive sessions. And then the everybody knows part of it is everybody knows that boards and commissions can discuss personnel matters in executive session. So all you got to do, if a reporter sticks a microphone in your face and say, did you discuss the matter of Smucker-Huckowitz in executive session? Well, yes, we did. It was a personnel matter. Oh, okay. Pardon me. I shouldn't have even asked you the question if it's a personnel matter. Well, let's take a look and see what the statute says. I'm looking at 5 GCA, section 8111, subsection A. And this is what it says. Executive sessions. No public agency is prohibited because of this chapter from holding executive sessions. Okay. Now notice that, first of all, notice that this is permissive. It allows a board or commission to hold an executive session. You can look long and hard through this law, and you won't find any prohibitory language in the open government law. You know, I remember Janella one time saying when she was in a release, she was quoted in a release about Richard Ibanez, the acting director of Parks and Rec. And the reporter asked a question about his tenure. And Janella's response, we are barred from discussing that because it's a personnel matter. Wrong. There's nothing in the open government law that forbids government employees from talking about things. Nothing. There are a few provisions here that say that a citizen sending in a sunshine request can be denied. That request can be denied for material from an executive session if it fits into certain categories. So here it goes. No public agency is prohibited because of this chapter from holding executive sessions, 1, with the Attorney General, Chief of Police, or respected designated representatives of each on a matter which poses a threat to public health, safety, or welfare. Okay, so that first exception then would be the Attorney, Chief of Police, health, welfare exception. That's the first one. 2, holding executive sessions during a regular or special meeting to consider the appointment, employment, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. Okay, that's the appointment, employment, or dismissal. Now, once again, those sessions, those matters can be discussed in open session. Nothing in this law says that if you're going to discuss the dismissal of an employee, you must do it in executive session. It's permissive. You may do it in executive session. If you're going to discuss the employment of someone, you may do it in executive session, but the statute doesn't say you must do it in executive session. Okay, number 3, to hear complaints or charges brought against such officer or employee by another public officer, person, or employee, unless such officer or employee requests a public hearing. So if I were to complain about the chief, well, not the chief of police, if I were to complain about the manager of GPA, and I went and I said to the CCU, I want to complain about the manager of GPA, they could do that in executive session, but they don't have to. Strictly permissive. Okay, and we go on to the next exception, which is notwithstanding any other provision of law, a public agency may hold executive sessions with its staff to consider matters within the scope of PEMRA. In other words, collective bargaining matters. Well, that makes a certain amount of sense. That in negotiation, you want to have a strategy. It's kind of like playing. It's kind of like playing blackjack. You don't want to turn you want the dealer. You want to see the dealer's card, but you don't want to turn your own whole cards over. So that would be number 4. And then finally, we have the last exception, which deals with attorneys. And people get this one wrong all the time. Okay, this is the 5th exception. Under no circumstance shall a public agency hold an executive or closed meeting to discuss legal matters, impending legal matters, or legal strategies with an attorney, except as herein provided below. All such discussions must be held in a public meeting, and minutes shall be kept and open to the public except as herein provided. 1. No such meeting may be closed except on the written recommendation of the attorney and an affirmative vote of the majority of the members of the board to go into executive session. So if a public agency wants to go into executive session with its lawyer, and I'll tell you why they could do that in a minute, the lawyer has to write a note. Dear commissioners, I suggest that we go into executive session to discuss the following matters because, and then the commission has to vote on the record, and there has to be a majority vote. Okay, second, a verbatim transcript by an authorized court reporter must be taken of all meetings which are closed to discuss litigation or possible litigation, and such transcript shall promptly be reduced to writing. Okay, so you got to have a court reporter in there. Meeting is over, a court reporter sits down and transcribes that meeting. Notice of the meeting shall be given as required of any other meeting. The notice shall indicate the place and time of the meeting, shall indicate the general subject matter to be discussed. Now, you caught that in the story, that nothing was discussed, nothing was mentioned in the agenda for the February 24, 2015 meeting about an executive session. So the notice of the meeting has to indicate the general subject matter to be discussed, as well as the specific exemption permitting an executive or closed meeting. If you don't do all those things, you're violating the open government law. After such meeting, the attorney or attorneys involved must file an affidavit with the agency, which shall become a public document that only matters relating to litigation or pending litigation have been discussed. There shall be public minutes made of all such executive sessions indicating the existence of the transcript, the subject matter of the meeting, and the names of all persons attending the closed meeting, their capacities, and dates and times the meeting started and closed. Okay, and then the transcript shall be sealed for a period of 6 months. And if the agency makes a motion before the expiration of 6 months, that period can be extended. Now, I hear people talking about the open government law, and they say, well, they got to make a transcript, and we'll get to see the transcript in 6 months. Wrong. The only time a transcript is made is under this very limited circumstance where an attorney is allowed to sit in on the executive session. And the executive session, let's see here. The executive session can only be called to discuss impending legal matters or legal strategies, primarily litigation or impending litigation. So no threat of litigation or no litigation, no lawyer in the executive session, and no transcript and no sealed transcript for 6 months. So that's what the law says. So there are only those 5 exceptions to the requirement that all meetings of boards and commissions be held in open and properly noticed public meeting with minutes taken with an agenda, etc., the whole thing. Only 5 times that commissioner board can meet in executive session. What about personnel matters, Real Joe Cruz?
Can't discuss them, sir.
You can't discuss everybody knows that, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Everybody knows it except people who have read the statute.
It's the unspoken law of the land, sir.
I guess so. But you'll still hear public officials say it. Oh, I can't tell you that. It's a personnel matter. So, reporters, if you're listening, when you stick a microphone in somebody's face and say, did you discuss so-and-so in executive session? When that person comes back and says, well, I can't talk about it because it's a personnel matter, your response is, you can't talk about it because you don't want to talk about it. You don't have to respond to a FOIA request if you don't want to. But the reason but you're not barred from talking about it. You're not barred from releasing the documents. It's strictly permissive. So don't let people get away with that. Oh, it's a personnel matter. I can't talk about it. The chief of police is great on that. He can't release that report on the police officer that punched the detainee in the gut, or arguably punched the detainee in the gut, or arrestee. Allegedly punched the arrestee in the gut. Well, it's a personnel matter, so I can't tell you about that. Well, the correct answer is I don't want to tell you about that because there's nothing that bars him from telling about it. So now that you know about how the law works, what conclusions can we draw from the Joey Duenas position that when it comes time for a salary increase for an employee, we can go into executive session and evaluate the employee, but we've got to come out of executive session in order to give him a raise? How does that sound? Now I'm going to point out one more really important part of the law here, and that's still in subsection A. Under no circumstances, however, shall a public agency hold an executive or closed meeting to discuss salaries, salary levels, or salary adjustments of any employee or officer. All such discussions or decisions must be held in a public meeting, and minutes shall be kept and open to the public. So how about that? So if the CCU has a meeting and they want to determine how to pay John Benevente, what his salary should be, it's okay for them to go into executive session and talk about John Benevente and say, yeah, he was really good here. It was never tardy. We never got him on overtime parking. He never wasted paper. He always kept his pencils sharp. He was a really good employee. And, you know, our revenue increased by 10% and our costs went down and on and on and on and on. And, you know, yeah, John has really done a good job this year. He did a really fine job. Okay, we can't talk about salary, but we've agreed that he's done a really good job. Okay, let's go out in open session. Okay, anybody want to make a motion? I move that we give John a $20,000 job because he's $1 raise because he's been doing such a good job. Is that okay? Does that pass muster under the open government law? No. And why would anybody even want to take the chance? And what is the great public policy that's advanced by evaluating public employees in private? This isn't the guy, this isn't the meter readers. This is the 6 top people at the Waterworks and Power Authority. Or in other agencies, it's the director. Okay, time for the 7th inning stretch. We'll break for the 7th inning stretch, and we'll come back. I'll wrap this up and move on to the next item on the card.
The The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
You know that morning routine we've talked about? Well, I found some ideas you might try to make it even more effective. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, small tweaks to the routine can make a difference.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guam Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla has all your favorites this Lent season. Try their fish tacos, crispy fish burger, spicy garlic butter shrimp, or lobster pad caprao pasta at a great price. Available daily for lunch and dinner. Visit Mezcla in Agagna and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
There we are, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, the 7th inning stretch. Means I got just 2 more innings at Tall Tales before I come to the end of another perfect day, Ash Wednesday, 2020, the first day of Lent. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here on leaving on a jet plane versus the CCU. Lessons to be learned here. Members of boards and commissions and members of the public. There should be very few reasons that a board or commission goes into executive session. And if you're on a board or commission, you better know for sure why you're going into executive session. Because as the CCU found out here, not knowing, not having a good reason can bite you and bite you hard. Now, it's unfortunate that things like this happen to our friends and neighbors. It's hard to get good people to serve on boards and commissions as it is. And the threat of having the Attorney General sue you if you were on a board or commission doesn't make the position any more attractive. That's why I think it's so important that people understand on boards and commissions the most dangerous animal in the agency, the board or commission on which you sit, the most dangerous animal is executive session. Treat it like a poisonous snake. Don't go near it unless you absolutely have to. Now, on the other hand, it's encouraging that the Attorney General is bringing this suit. It's encouraging that the Attorney General brought suit against those GURA commissioners. The sad thing there was my brother attorneys kind of let us all down because when it came time for the jury to decide, the jury was aware that those people who violated the open government law were told by lawyers that they were doing okay. Now, there's no legal defense that you could advance. I moved that this case be dismissed because I was doing what my lawyer told me to do. That doesn't work. But the strength of a jury, remember, a jury, you're entitled to, under our system of law, of a jury of your peers, people just like you. They're not law trained. They don't wear fancy robes. They're folks. And they bring their own sense of right and wrong and justice and injustice with them into that jury room. And I think it's going to be pretty hard to get a jury to convict someone when the proofs are on that that person in good faith relied on his lawyer. So, and then we had the same thing in November 2018. 2 lawyers not only sat in the executive session and didn't warn the commissioners that they were violating the law, they not only sat in the executive session, they took salary increases themselves. Very interesting. So, once again, a lot of caution is required when it comes to executive session. But we've turned the corner. As Levin said, it's not business as usual anymore. And we turned the corner on the Sunshine Law also. 3 government officials, now 3 directors, have found out the hard way that if you play fast and loose with the open government law, it's going to cost you $1,000 out of your own pocket. The first one was the director of the director of land management, who found out that you can't just ignore Sunshine Law requests. The chief of police found out that you can't ignore Sunshine Law requests. And there was one more. It'll come to me in a minute. Anyhow, so much for and I would see these 2 laws as being the cornerstone of our quest for good government, because they make it hard for government officials to do what they want to do when what they want to do is not in accordance with the law. It also gives you the opportunity to write a letter to one of these people and make sure you know you're going to get a response. One more dimension here to the Levin Camacho versus CCU, and that is that he's also asking the commissioners to pay to the government the amount of the salary increase that was granted during the executive session. And that's pursuant not to the open government law, but to the enforcement of proper government spending law. That's another statute section in Title V. And what it says is that any taxpayer resident in Guam has standing to sue a government official to enjoin improper spending or to recover the money improperly spent. And improper spending means spending not in accordance with the law. So you go into executive session, you decide to give a raise, you violated the law, you're going to have to come back and pony up that money yourself if the Attorney General is successful. So, again, unfortunate for the people involved, but a real strong lesson to folks who serve on boards and commissions. Don't do that stuff. Okay, next item on my card is Mary Gutierrez versus Tello. And this one goes back a few days, but it's a KUAM story. Education Board Chair Klitzkie square off over budget reporting. The Guam Education Board and Department of Education are scheduled to appear back before senators in April to continue fighting for their $365 million fiscal year 2021 budget. During round 1, however, Guam Education Board Chairwoman Maria Gutierrez made sure it was known that education officials don't have the time to appear before every single senator to defend their numbers. Gutierrez said they're following protocol and submitting their budget to their oversight chair, the chairperson on appropriations, and to the speaker. Gutierrez was addressing her request made by Minority Leader Senator Tello Klitzkie. So if you want, here's a quote from Gutierrez, so if you want us to visit all of you, I'm sorry, because we're also working. And I trust Senator Vice Speaker Nelson, I trust Chairman St. Augustine. So if you're telling us that we should come see you or the superintendent, I'm sorry. He's very busy. The subtitle of this paragraph could have been thanks, but no thanks. Ms. Gutierrez, this is from Tello, I appreciate what your comments are, how you feel as chairman of the board, but we all have a responsibility, a duty to vote on things that we feel that that who need the most money. Tadigui said, now if the Department of Education needs the money, then they should see each of us senators just like all of the other agencies. GVB, Attorney General's office, the courts, they all visit us individually to talk to us about their budget. And if you think that's wrong, then I don't know how you're going to get the support of the other senators. So there's a lot going on here. At this point, these are the conclusions I'm drawing. Hey, look, Senator Tello, I got more important things to do than to come over to your office and kiss your ring and beg that you approve the budget for the Department of Education, which we've already spent a lot of time putting together. On the other hand, I see Senator Tello Tadigui saying, wow, these folks at the Board of Education, especially the chairman, are just too important to come over here and talk to me about the budget, which is kind of unfortunate because it might be that we could work out some kind of accommodations that might allow me to support that budget. Maybe there's one item in there that I don't like, and I could talk and test the feeling of the board to see what their reaction would be if I were to delete that on the floor. Or the same thing with adding a section. Okay, and then Gutierrez answers back. Tadigui says, if you think that's wrong, then I don't know how you're going to get the support of the other senators. And then Gutierrez answers back, I go to the speaker. Vice Speaker, who is the Committee on Education, Gutierrez responded. Well, you need 8 people to vote on that, Tadigui says. And then Gutierrez answers, well, if children is the priority, if the students are the priority for all of you, then we don't have to come to each one of you if education is top priority for all of you because it's election time. Thank you. Whoa. The DOE budget oversight hearing was continued until April 21 at 9 a.m. GDOE's $365 million budget is a $21 million increase over the current fiscal year. According to education officials, DOE has faced significant budget cuts resulting from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and has implemented cost-cutting measures to manage the reduction in resources. So, if you are a member of the Board of Education and a senator says, you know, I'd really like to talk to you about your budget, just you and me, one-on-one, if it were me, or let's make it real. Let's say I'm the director of education, and a senator says to me, you know, Bob, I'd really like to talk with you one-on-one about your budget. Can you somehow squeeze me into your busy schedule? I'd say, you better, Hong Kong, believe it, because I would take every effort, every opportunity that I could to lobby, to present my case, to make my argument, to do whatever I could to convince that senator to vote for the budget that I think is appropriate. And if I could, I'd talk to every single one of them. That's the way I would do it. The budget of the department, of course, is one of the most important things that happens every year. And I applaud the department for asking for $21 million more. I keep hearing this, well, you know, you have to hold it back because the Trump tax cut and we don't have much money and all of these games. That's where I would be on Mary Gutierrez's side. If you really think that children are the top priority, then you wouldn't be saying these things to me. You would give us what we need. Now, you might put us on our proofs as to what we need, but as soon as you find out what we need, you'd give us that money. And if we got more money than some other agency, well, that would mean that that other agency isn't as important as the Department of Education, because it isn't. That's the way it goes. It's not the job of the Director of Education to, quote, help the government with its financial problems. It's the job of the Director of Education to go over there and pound his fist on the table and say, we have to have this much money. So, a very interesting story about a chairman of a board, of the Board of Education, and one of the senators, and we'll see how it plays out as that budget finally gets to the floor. Okay, next item on the card here is LGBTQIA versus butt edge. Or I'm not saying that, am I? Saying that right? Butt judge?
Booted judge.
Butt judge. I'm just going to stick with butt judge.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now a couple days ago I read an article from the Wall Street Journal that there is no spectrum, sex spectrum beyond male and female. That, you know, that there are two sexes. One is called male, the other one is called female, and that's it. Now, I don't know that I want to read that again. And I also read the article about Sabina Paris Be Kind to Animals bill criminalizing bestiality. And I have one here, a bill from Hawaii that would make a sexual assault of animals a crime. And the article points out that there are only, let's see, that sexual assault of an animal, I guess it can't be consensual, right? Is prohibited in 46 states, but not Hawaii and not the territory of Guam. But Sabina's going to fix that. So we seem to be paying so much more attention now to sex than we ever did before. But now I'm going to go here with LGBTQIA versus butt judge. And this is in the form of a letter. Dear fellow members of the LGBTQIA community. And this comes from a website called queersagainstpete.com. It's a website, and it goes like this. This election cycle will be presented with plenty of options, up and down the ballot. Candidates' stances will impact us, our families and communities. If we've learned anything from our ancestors and transcestors, it's that we must speak out and act up. This primary election is one example. There has been much talk about identity and diversity in the race to the Democratic nomination for president. Some have touted former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg's openly gay identity as proof of progress in our politics. However, being gay is not enough to earn the support of the LGBTQIA community. I guess one is you got to have a good memory to remember all of those initials. Okay, we're coming up to the home stretch here.
If you own a Toyota, please listen to this. It could help you avoid injury, maybe save your life. The Takata airbags installed in certain Toyotas can explode and shoot out sharp metal fragments at people inside the vehicle. You don't need to be in a collision. They could explode any time. In the U.S., these airbags have caused 26 deaths. There's been a worldwide recall of Takata airbags, and most have had the faulty parts replaced. But here in Guam, there are still over 3,000 Toyotas on the road with potentially lethal airbags, and yours could be one of them. So please, take your Toyota to Atkins Grow, even if you didn't buy it from us, and get the inflator replaced. It costs you nothing, takes just about an hour, and it could save a life, yours or someone you love. The AK song says we're here for life. That's never been more true.
At Atkins Grow, we're here for life.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, Two Lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company mug collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Hey, here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. The home stretch for Tall Tales means I got about 7 more minutes till the plaintive strains of Ravel's Bolero will cut me off at the vocal cords. So I was reading an open letter. I got this out of the New Yorker magazine. New Yorker published something from a website called queersagainstpete.com. And it's an open letter to the fellow members of the LGBTQIA community. And I'm going to pick up with the third paragraph. We cannot in good conscience allow Mayor Pete to be the nominee without demanding that he address the needs and concerns of the broader lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual communities. That's where we got the LGBTQIA. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersection, asexual. While many see different issues in silos, we are clear that the LGBTQIA people are directly and disproportionately impacted by police violence, incarceration, unaffordable health care, homelessness, deportation, and economic inequality, among other things. It's another class of victims. Wow. Well, they're in the right party. The Democrat Party thrives on victimhood. Mayor Pete is leaning on the support and actively courting. He's actively courting the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual community, but has shown time and again that he is out of touch, not fit to be president of the United States, and simply falls short. Well, I found something here that I agree with. Mayor Pete is not fit to be president of the United States. You guys got that one right. Okay, now here's the wrap on Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete opposes free universal public college. Oh. He does not support canceling student loan debt. Whoa. Well, I don't know. Tar and feathers would be too good for this guy. Mayor Pete has no plan to restore the vote for all people who are currently incarcerated people and create an alternative policy or end cash bail. Wow. Mayor Pete has not addressed the concerns related to Eric Logan, a black South Bend resident who was shot and killed by a white police officer.
Oh, my.
And Mayor Pete has done nothing about it. Furthermore, while in office, Mayor Pete refused to release the police tapes relating to the demotion of Darrell Boykins, the first black person to serve as police chief. Now, I'll bet I know why Mayor Pete didn't release those tapes, Real Joe Cruz.
Let me guess.
Okay, give it a shot.
Personnel matter?
There you go. Even though maybe I don't understand it, they got it down pat in South Bend, Indiana. Did I ever tell you about Indiana?
No.
Yeah, I've been to some really exotic places. I've been to Indonesia. I've been to India. I've even been to Indiana.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't get any more exotic than that. And then the letter goes on to say, we echo the demands of Black Lives Matter, South Bend to create a citizens review board and for release of the tapes. Going on with the laundry list of all of the things that Mayor Pete has not done. Mayor Pete has not said if he would support a moratorium to end deportations or that he would decriminalize border crossing. God, this guy is just one problem after another. Actually, the more I listen to the stuff he's not going to do, the more tempted I am to vote for him. Okay, well, we're right up against the end of the hour here. This is so good that I can't let it go. I got to come back to it tomorrow. And then I'm going to follow that with Butt Judge versus Rush Limbaugh, which is another pretty good one. And in summary here, what the LGBTQIA community is complaining about with Mayor Pete is that he may be gay, but he just ain't gay enough. Yeah.
Wow. So you'd vote for him for the things he's not going to do?
Yeah, well, I
like that mentality, sir.
Yeah. It sounds like he's on the right track there. Yeah, okay, where is that Ravel's Bolero? Very good, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, another exciting episode of Tall Tales. We're starting off on Lent. We'll be back tomorrow at 1600. The Real Joe Cruz and I here on Tall Tales. Hope to see you all then.